have nothing on the microphone? All right. Vanessa, we got you there now? Okay. All right. Different pot all of a sudden, was it? Anyway, okay. We're all good to go, I guess. Welcome to the show, folks. We're off to a bumpy start, but that's okay. We have a little turbulence. A pun intended. I was talking about Air Canada, of course. Air Canada is back in the air, and or they will be soon. Canada's largest airline will gradually begin operations today. That's after Air Canada and the union representing some 10,000 of its flight attendants reached a tentative deal to end the three-day strike. Air Canada says the first flights are scheduled for this evening, but some flights will continue to be canceled until schedules are stabilized. The airline says only customers with confirmed bookings whose flights are shown as operating should go to the airport. It says it'll offer options to those with canceled flights, including a full refund or future travel credit. So this story is obviously impacting a lot of travelers. Joining us to talk about this is Gábor Lukács, Air Passenger Rights President. Gábor, thanks for joining the show.
Good morning, Todd. Great to be with you.
Yeah, so I guess the good news is that there's this is coming to an end at least, right?
Well, I think the good news is that perhaps the employees are going to finally get a good treatment. I think that many passengers who may even have been very frustrated by Air Canada's conduct in this situation have a tremendous sympathy for the crew and in particular for the flight attendants for how dismally they have been treated by their employer, Air Canada.
Okay, so now we talk about disruptions to people. Obviously, a lot of people have been disrupted by cancellations and into today as well. So what advice do you give to people, first of all, who have had problems or flights canceled or whatever? What are some general things you'd like people to know about?
The most important thing you need to know is that you have a right to alternate transportation, including on competitor airlines. Do not take a refund from Air Canada under any circumstance. If you take a refund, Air Canada may use it against you as a way to wash its hands from liability for your alternate transportation expenses if you buy something on your own while you have taken a refund. The correct sequence of events is to first wait until your flight is canceled, give Air Canada a chance to rebook you 2-3 hours. If they are refusing to rebook you or tell you that they are unable to rebook you on 120 of their airlines that they checked, or they offer you a rebooking that does not meet the legal requirements of the APPR, which I'm going to touch upon in a moment, then you can and should go out, buy yourself a ticket, and not take the refund from Air Canada, send Air Canada the bill from the new ticket that you purchased with a letter of demand for payment within 30 days, noting that they failed to fulfill their APPR obligations. And if Air Canada refuses to pay, then take Air Canada to small claims court. Under the APPR, what you are entitled to in such situation is a rebooking on Air Canada or partner airlines' next available flight departing within 48 hours of the original departure time. And if that's not available, then Air Canada has to get you a ticket, a seat on the next available flight of any carrier. And any carrier literally means any carrier, any competitor airline, any airline that is out there. And if Air Canada is telling you we cannot do it or we don't do it, you are within your right to get yourself a ticket and Air Canada will have to pay for it. There was a similar situation a couple months ago, released a decision right from here, from Nova Scotia Small Claims Court, where a passenger had a Sunwing ticket and Sunwing canceled their flight and didn't even put the passenger on a alternate transportation. The passenger very wisely went out and purchased an Air Canada ticket in that case. And Sunwing was ordered by Small Claims Court here in Nova Scotia, in Halifax actually, to pay for the extra expenses incurred by the passenger.
Okay, so what are some things you're hearing from people? Are you hearing that Air Canada is not being a good player when it comes to right now when it comes to dealing with the traveling public? What reports are you hearing? You must be inundated, I would think, with people sending you messages about their own testimonials here.
Yes, we are receiving a lot of messages, and that's certainly a concern. What we are hearing is that Air Canada has been shirking its obligations under the APPR. It has not been rebooking passengers on competitor airlines. Even the law is black and white on that point. Air Canada has been sending passengers emails that misrepresents to passengers that there are no seats available at all on any carrier or on these 120 carriers they checked. Overall, Air Canada has been trying to scam passengers to believe that they don't have any other option but taking a refund, which is absolutely untrue. Many cases that were reported to us in the Facebook group, passengers have been able to secure transportation for themselves on other carriers on their own. Air Canada just didn't feel like paying for the higher price. So what Air Canada was essentially doing there is fraud. They have been trying to give passengers false information that they knew or should have reasonably known to be false for their own, Air Canada's own financial benefit of trying to persuade a passenger to give up their right to alternate transportation and thereby save Air Canada the expense. Because, the refund would be, say, $500. The cost of a new ticket and the last minute ticket would be $2,000 or even more. So this is not just a mistake by Air Canada. This is action that actually has a significant financial upside for Air Canada if they succeed at misleading passengers.
Okay, who's the burden of proof on when it comes to this? Is it how do you prove this?
If you receive an email from Air Canada saying we weren't able to find flights for you, then you go out and able to book a flight for yourself. There is your proof. The fact that you were able to book a flight proves that Air Canada was lying.
It's just as simple as that, eh?
It is very simple. And there have been, unfortunately, some misinformation spread by Air Canada and its allies to try to make people believe that somehow they have no rights. But on this one issue, Section 18, subsection 1 and 18, subsection 1.1a of the APPR are very, very clear. And there's lots of good case law, both from Nova Scotia, Ontario, and also from a BC Civil Resolutions Tribunal, that when an airline fails to rebook you in accordance with APPR, and you then go out and buy yourself a ticket, the airline will be on the hook. So don't let them intimidate you. Don't get scared. This is the time to stand your ground, and I would say you should take a lesson from the flight attendants. They stood their ground, and that's why perhaps they managed to get a fair deal. You need to stand your ground as well. Air Canada is not like your friendly neighbor. Being nice to your neighbor, being friendly, being conciliatory is, of course, a great value that as Canadians we all like to share. But Air Canada is not treating you like your neighbor. They're treating you as a cash cow. They're treating you just as a ticket number, not as a human being. So when you deal with Air Canada, don't extend to the company the same type of niceties, courtesies that you would extend to your neighbor. It's a transaction. It is a contract. They agree to deliver some services. They're required to provide some services by the law. When they fail to do so, they have to pay. Don't be shy to assert your rights.
Wow. So the people who are on the front lines, working in the airports, working at the kiosks, working on at the call centers for Air Canada, are they given their marching orders by their management? Like, how is this messaging filtering down to the people who are facing the public?
My understanding is that these people are given false information by management. They are being told, reports I've seen is, we are not allowed to rebook you on WestJet or Air Transat in some cases. Not everybody, but that is how it works. And it's very unfortunate that this is happening because it pits the passenger against the frontline agent who themselves in the privacy of their room may actually know that what they're being told is incorrect. They may know that their employer is expecting them to do something which is wrong, to deceive customers. But if they want to keep their job, they still have to do it. What I would also like to put out at this juncture, that if you are in such a situation, if you work for Air Canada and you have seen how Air Canada treated your fellow employees, flight attendants, we are always open to receive information in a brown envelope to expose some of the conduct that is happening within the corporation. So we certainly warmly welcome whistleblowers to somehow bring an end to this type of situation.
All right. This is not unique to Air Canada. I'm sure that, or do other air carriers in Canada behave in the same way?
Unfortunately, WestJet is also known for deceiving customers. Just earlier this year, we had to obtain an interlocutory injunction against WestJet to prohibit it from continuing to mislead passengers about their rights for reimbursement for meals and accommodation when the flight is canceled for reasons within the carrier's control. A bit different situation. But this brings me actually to this situation with Air Canada, because if you are traveling from Europe back to Canada and your flight was canceled due to the strike, you are owed not just alternate transportation, but also meals, accommodation, and 600 euros or 520 British pounds, depending on where you're flying from, lump sum compensation on top of everything. In addition, if you're flying back from other international locations, then most likely you're covered by the Montreal Convention, which has the force of law in Canada. It's an international treaty that protects passengers' rights. And under Article 19 of the Montreal Convention, the airline may be liable for your meals and accommodation and even lost wages, that you incur losses due to the strike. So just because our Canadian air passenger protection regulations is broken, it is dysfunctional, and does not offer you adequate protection, if you were traveling internationally, don't let it fool you to believe that you don't have other rights. And sometimes we have seen a case in British Columbia where it was held that the situation was outside the carrier's control, but still the carrier was held liable for the passenger's expenses under the Montreal Convention.
Okay, so is there a place where people can go to get all this information? Does your website provide a lot of this information? Because a lot of people listening probably right now are probably wanting to educate themselves better to be able to get to maximize what to get what they can out of the airline. Direct people to your website, please.
Absolutely. Our website is airpassengerrights.ca. Right on the front page, we have an article that deals with Air Canada's strike. We also have a long video which we encourage passengers to watch before they ask us questions. It goes through the case law, through the legislation. It's about an hour, 45-minute lesson on your rights as a passenger, and we warmly encourage passengers to watch it. It's airpassengerrights.ca.
Gábor, appreciate your time. Thanks for your hard work as well.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, take care. Gábor Lukács, Air Passenger Rights President. And it's a real shame, folks, that the company behaves in this way and that they will manipulate people and as Gábor says, lie to people and force you to try and take alternatives, which may cost you and not be upfront with you. And look, it's got to be very difficult, I would think, for the frontline workers, well, the people working at the kiosk or at the call centers, answering the phones, facing the consumer, the public directly. That's an awful situation to put them in. It really is. It's unfortunate. We'll open the phone lines between 11 and 12 today. Perhaps you might want to share some of your stories about this and other things as well. I get some other things in the pile as well. A reminder, or I should say, Steve Murphy will join us between 10:30 and 11 today. So we'll look forward to a good chat with Steve Murphy. Always enjoy him. Next, homeless people in Nova Scotia's woods choosing to stay despite the ban and wildfire risk. That when we come back. All right, I saw this story on the CBC website. I'll read a bit of it. As wildfires burn around Nova Scotia and officials caution about the risk of more fires breaking out, community organizations and government departments are trying to get people living in the woods to leave. Many, however, cannot be convinced. Joining us to talk about all this is Matthew Reid, manager of Souls Harbour Rescue Mission's mobile outreach program. Matthew, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
All right. So how many people are we talking about here are living in the woods still in our area?
There's approximately about 100 people still in wooded areas sleeping rough.
Okay, and that compares to what? How many have you helped leave the woods?
Well, at this point, us directly, we've not been successful in helping people find or get into a shelter or find other space. People seem to be very content to stay where they're at, despite the risk. Okay,
and is that surprising or is that predictable?
Somewhat predictable. When people set up camp and this is their home, just the same as anybody that is housed, we generally don't want to leave what we're comfortable and what we know, right?
Okay, and what about the law and the woods ban, and does it apply to these people or no?
Well, absolutely. It would apply to all Nova Scotians. However, just the same as any other law that's out there, you have to choose to follow it or break it, right, Todd? So sometimes people choose to just to stay, and that's where they're comfortable.
Okay, what about the living arrangements? Are they can't? There's fires, I'm assuming. How are they? What are the fire risks here?
Well, we've taken the approach of education and just making sure that everybody understands that the conditions are very dry. Please don't light a fire. And so far, we've not come across anybody having a fire because we've created language and education materials to say, hey, please don't, and ask them to put it out. But so far, successfully, we've not come across anybody having a fire in a wooded area. So that's great news.
All right. So when it comes to government and it's enforcing the law, what have government officials said? Are they going to leave these people alone, or are they given a time frame in order to abide by the law, or what's the messaging been, or has there been messaging been from government officials?
The messaging that we've received is all about education. It's very much letting people know that right now it's not safe to be in a wooded area, and to encourage them to to find somewhere else to stay. But staying in a wooded area is just not safe. And if we were to come across a fire, to ask them to put it out. And if they don't, well, then we just escalate that to emergency services to handle correctly.
Okay. Are there options?
Options for
somewhere to stay?
Yeah, absolutely. So each week there's meetings and we go over how many shelter beds are available in the city, and it fluctuates from day to day. The need does. But if someone wants to move into a shelter, we will do our best to find a place for them to go.
Okay, so do you have a personal opinion on this? Do you feel as though that people should comply with the law and get out of this situation, or do you empathize with, I suppose you have some empathy for them?
Both. It is unsafe right now. It is very dry. We can see that the leaves are changing color because there's a lack of water. My hope and desire is that we could move everybody out into housing, permanent housing. That would be ideal, that nobody would have to sleep rough here in the city, and that everybody would have a place to call home that has a roof over their head and running water. However, that's not the case. So it would be nice, but if people choose to sleep in the woods, we want to support them and give them the best supports that to help them live day to day.
All right. Some might say that you are enabling them. What's your response to that?
Well, no, we're not enabling. We're supporting where people are at. And there's different circumstances. There's different reasons why. And that could be a whole topic in and of itself. But we want to support people where they are to help them survive, help them live. And the best way to do that is obviously with food, compassion, clothing, empathy, and education, and help them move along with the best supports.
Okay, but if they're putting other people at risk and to the point where people aren't even allowed to walk on a trail because we're told that's too dangerous, yet people are being allowed to live in the woods, and I'm not trying to be argumentative here, I'm just trying to make sure that I cover all the bases. I can see why some might not like this, I guess. What's your response to those who say get people the hell out of the woods, whether you live in there or not? You're putting too many people out, too many others at risk. You have other options. You can go to a shelter. You just said that there are spaces available. People would facilitate that move. So it might be a nicety to live in the woods in the summer, but it's too dangerous. What's your response to that?
It comes down to education and people's desire and will. So if they're not willing to move, we're not compliant. We just take the approach of education and support and to be available. So the moment that somebody wants to make that life change, to move into a shelter or move into a program, Souls Harbour is committed to helping them make that move and to basically change lifestyle and be successful.
Okay, I suppose though that if a fire were to result from one of these encampments and widespread destruction might occur, what then after the fact that would be difficult. That would be a difficult message, right? Obviously.
Absolutely, and that would be unfortunate, and we hope that doesn't happen. We wouldn't want to see anybody's home destroyed or property. However, as Souls Harbour, we can only educate, we can only support, and make them aware of the risk, and hopefully they make the correct decision.
So you've not come across anybody that's willing to move out of the woods as of yet?
As of yet, no. People seem to be very content where they're at, and we've educated, and every evening that our teams go out, the messaging is the same. Hey, it is very dry. Please don't have a fire. There is a fire ban or burn ban on, and actually you can't be in the woods. However, people make out their own decisions and choose to stay.
Okay, and when it comes to your team, you guys have an exemption as well to be in the woods. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're supportive services, and we've checked with the authorities and our supporting agencies to ensure that our teams can support people in the woods and encampments that are located around wooded areas. So we continue to go support, hand out water, hand out food, and check on their well-being.
Okay, Matthew, appreciate your time. Thanks.
No worries, Todd. Have a great day.
All right, take care. Matthew Reid, manager of Souls Harbour Rescue Mission's mobile outreach program. In the CBC story, by the way, there's some quotes from Tim Hewson and Andy Fillmore on this. They were asked about this. When a reporter asked whether the fire started at a tent encampment, a recent fire in Bears Lake, because that's the rumor, of course, and look, rumors are just that, right? So Hewson deflected, saying an investigation will take place after we get through this. And he went on to say, but for now, the focus is just on containing the fire, fighting the fires, and just kind of reiterating to Nova Scotians that it's a risky situation and obey the laws that are in place right now. Hewson says, well, the law is we're not allowed to be in the woods, Mr. Premier. So it's a mixed message here, right? And I get it that it's people living rough and it's different than somebody walking on a trail. I get that. But the risk would be exponentially higher, would it not, to live in the woods as opposed to simply walking on a trail? Halifax Mayor Andy Fillmore had a similar response when he was asked what options the city is considering for relocating people from the woods. He says, it's a little too soon to get into details. He said, I will have more to say about that after a few more conversations with the provincial housing minister, but we are looking at a way of getting folks out of danger and therefore getting us all out of danger by getting them out of the woods. Well, according to the chat that I just had with Matthew Reid, that's not going to matter because he just said that the spaces are available and people would do quite a bit to move the people out of the woods. But they're simply resistant and not leaving the woods. Something that I'm going to ask you to weigh in on when we open the phone lines. What are your thoughts on this, folks? Should we simply kind of turn a blind eye to people living in the woods, including the Premier, and who has been adamant that people stay out of the woods, and people receiving fines of over $25,000? Yet people are living in the woods who have other options. I don't know. I try and be empathetic and understand that people living in the woods, it's a tough situation. Nobody wants to do that, and it's not a fair apples-to-apples comparison to others recreating in the woods. I get that. But that said, the risk is considerably higher living in the woods because you can't tell me that people aren't doing drugs and smoking cigarettes in the woods and aren't having fires because you know that they are. Bottom line. Anyway, an interesting topic nonetheless. When we come back, the next half hour I'll spend with the one and only Steve Murphy. We'll be back. All right, here in studio is Steve Murphy, CTV special correspondent, analyst, commentator, former anchor, of course, friend of the show. Steve Murphy, thanks for the coffee again.
Testing. Want to make sure this mic is working, Mike.
The mic's working. That's right.
That's great.
Right.
Thanks, Todd. Good morning to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to have you in. And
Thanks.
You were sitting in. You were listening to the last chat that I had with Matthew Reid, manager of the Souls Harbour Rescue Mission.
Yep.
Talking about homeless people in the province living in the woods, and he says that, look, not only are people reluctant to leave the woods, they're not leaving the woods, right, despite having options. What's your
doesn't that sound
broad
familiar?
strokes thoughts on that?
Doesn't that sound familiar? Because we've been dealing with the issue of homelessness and people who are living. The term now is living rough.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with that issue for many, many years, and many of the people who are living rough are choosing to do so for reasons that are their own. Some will tell you that they would rather live rough than abide by the rules or regulations that are attached to the housing options that are provided for them. So this is not a problem about the forests, although, clearly the danger in the forests and the danger to the forests, these are real. This is another manifestation, another face of the homelessness problem, and what we can do, should do, and will do to enable people to move into better living conditions than living in the woods or on the commons or in bushes in Dartmouth. We don't want people to live there, but we need to also accept, and this is a hard thing for many of us to accept, that some people prefer that to the options for reasons that are their own. And I, by the way, I want to say how fortunate we are to have Souls Harbour.
Yeah, for sure.
And organizations like it, which are doing such a great job in the community. And one can hear the frustration in Matthew's voice because he knows, and I mean, he said it, you're not supposed to be in the woods. It's dangerous for them to be in the woods, too. I mean, yes, you're right. They are a danger to the woods when they're tinder dry, but there's also a danger of being in the woods should there be a fire. Then what are we going to do about trying to get those people out? So, we're lucky to have Souls Harbour. But this, again, is another manifestation of a problem that is so deep and broad, the problem of homelessness and the causes of homelessness. Why are people homeless? There are many, many answers. There are issues of addiction and mental health and poverty and all kinds of issues, and we really need to address those if we're ever going to solve the problem.
And, of course, look, we don't want to be heavy-handed, and the image of police going into woods and daring and dragging people out, that is not a good look, right?
Police don't want to do it either.
The last thing they want to do. So, but therein lies the problem, Steve, is that we don't deal with the problem.
Well, again, and at some point, we do have to move to enforcement. We live in a society, an ordered society, and enforcement or regulation or management, call it whatever you will, and let's face it, enforcement is tougher and stronger legally than management. But in an ordered society, we do need to have regulation, management, and occasionally enforcement, but we need to be prudent in how we choose to do it. And, most of the people who are living in the woods are not looking for any trouble. But on the other hand, they are causing trouble potentially for themselves and for society. So, we're going to need to continue walking a tightrope, and hopefully we don't too often fall off on the wrong side. I don't know that heavy-handedness is what we want, but there will come a point when there has to be a modicum of enforcement. We're seeing this in this Air Canada flight attendants dispute, where enforcement and was the government heavy-handed in imposing back-to-work orders? That is the law. That is the law. You might not like the law. In fact, the union didn't like the law. Most of us don't like heavy-handedness. Most of us also don't want the country shut down by an airline strike. So again, we're caught in the middle in the difficult balancing act.
Well, if I'm a union head though for CUPE and I'm told, listen, you could potentially face jail time. That's a pretty serious ask, right?
It is. But when the head of a union says, "Look, we're going to defy the order, and if that means I go to jail, so be it."
Yeah.
Well, he would likely argue that he's being civilly disobedient, or that he's taking a principled stand. I leave it to others to determine, really which it is, because it depends on your point of view. And I should also stipulate, by way of conflict of interest, that a member of my immediate family is a flight attendant, not in this bargaining unit. So my opinions about the cause are biased in favor of the flight attendants. I don't believe in unpaid work. I don't think unpaid work is a good idea, and I do think we've had flight attendants doing a lot of unpaid work. On the other hand, the rule of law is important, and if there is an order, a legal order, to return to work, and if that becomes a legal instrument, then you defy it at your own peril, which again the president of the union said he was prepared to do. In the end, by the way, the system almost worked as it should. The federal government imposed its will. The union defied it. But they did end up back at the bargaining table at 7 o'clock Eastern time last night. And by the time I was listening to you guys this morning, the thing was at tentative agreement. So did the system work? Yeah, it wasn't without some bumps, and it wasn't without some hard language and some very tough decisions. But the system has worked, it appears.
Do you think that unpaid work, there's a bit of semantics at play here when it comes to that?
Well, there may be, but I think the reality is, as I understand it, that it is not unusual in the airline industry for flight attendants to not be paid until the doors of the aircraft are closed and remain closed.
Yeah.
That would rather be like saying, well, Todd, you don't get paid until you walk in the door here at the radio station.
Yeah.
Well, you might say, well, actually, I don't get paid until I walk in the door at the radio station.
Or go on the air.
Or go on the air.
Yeah.
Or go on the air is a better example.
Yeah.
But I happen to know, because you and I have correspondence occasionally, you're working on the weekends.
That's
You're
right.
booking
Yeah.
guests. Vanessa's working on the weekends. Yeah. So there is some unpaid work associated with many jobs. But the difference, I think, with people who work in the cabins of aircraft is that they have to be at the airport at a certain time. They have to prepare the aircraft. And, of course, you can sit on the tarmac for a long time before anybody closes the door.
That's right.
And the flight attendants are doing safety demonstrations or looking after passengers and so on. So I think that it probably is unpaid work. But allow me to say, again, I have a member of my immediate family who works in that industry, so I am sympathetic to that argument.
Sure. What are your thoughts on collective bargaining in general? And because really when the government steps in, it really neuters the collective bargaining as a spear, right? It really does.
Well, I would say, first of all, that most of the rights that you and I and people like us have enjoyed in society are the result of hard-won collective bargaining.
Yeah.
We owe a great debt of gratitude to unions and the union movement for what it made standard in Canada. We have a very good Canada Labour Code. It applies to this industry, by the way. Broadcasting and federally regulated industries are all controlled by the Canada Labour Code. So I think we all owe unions a great debt of gratitude. Are these tactics working today? I don't know if they are from this point of view. I think there was great sympathy. Let's talk about the flight attendants specifically. There is great sympathy. There is sympathy for their argument. But when the public in large numbers, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, are personally inconvenienced, and when their travel plans are jeopardized, their holiday plans or their work plans are jeopardized, when their money is jeopardized, the sympathy maybe gets a little bit softer. Now, the purists would argue, well, that's the way it's supposed to work. The unions are supposed to cause inconvenience, and the customers are supposed to put pressure on the company to settle. Yes, but that doesn't happen in a vacuum, and people walk away with hard feelings. Then the government gets involved and says, well, that's it, got to go back to work, and we get to the point where we were, where people defy a legal order of the government. I don't think it's working particularly well. I don't have any ripe options to offer, alternatives, because collective bargaining is supposed to be tough on both sides. And at the final analysis, Todd, the only thing that the workers have is the right to threaten to withdraw service and to do so.
That's it. And here we go with Dal. Dal, how's he, right? So,
well, could the timing be any worse for Dal?
That's right.
I know obviously the students aren't here yet, but presumably the profs and the other members of faculty are now working on the return of students. So this will be a terrible disruption in our local economy if this happens. Dal, in addition to being a large university, is a large employer, and it has huge economic impact.
Large landowner as well.
Well, one of the largest.
Yeah.
So no, anything that happens at Dal has an effect right across the community. So yeah, it's going to be tough.
What are your thoughts on? Look, when you look at when you're staring down the post-secondary education system barrel, and you look at the cabinet deficits that they're running, and we're talking massive deficits, Steve. Like not only $1 million, we're talking $70+ million deficits. I mean, how does a university make that up?
Well, it's tough. There are only a couple of ways. You ask the government for more money. You ask the students for more money, students and their parents, or both. And really, let's not forget that for every dollar that tuition is paid, the government contributes more.
Sure.
So the government is already a large funder of universities. They're also grappling at the moment, Todd, with the enrollment problems that result from the decision to limit the number of students coming into the country. Yeah. And this is a problem particularly here in Nova Scotia. Cape Breton University is having a terrible problem with it because so many of their students were foreign students. So it's an economic problem, and it proves the old adage that in every solution is the germ of another problem. Yeah. We did curtail the number of foreign students coming into the country. Now the universities are on hard times economically. So, again, it has to be rebalanced somehow.
Do you think that perhaps some paradigm shift when it comes to education and the undergraduate system is needed at some point to revisit that? Look, instead of the 4-year program, and
perhaps.
I mean, when you look at the university curriculum, Steve, you go back 50 years, it's the same friggin' thing, right?
Well, I think there've been some
maybe
changes.
I'm a little harsh, but you get my point,
But I think
right?
the short answer to your question is yes. I mean, I think universities are critical to our economy locally, and they contribute a great deal. to life in Nova Scotia and life in the Halifax region. On the other hand, yeah, it may be that we need to take a look at how many people are going into university programs, particularly because there seems to be an inherent bias in our education system toward university and not necessarily toward college and community college. And this is why we have a shortage, for example, in the skilled trades. We need tradespeople, but I'm not sure that as many young people are streamed in that direction as could be or should be. So, yes, it may be time to take another look at it. But on the other hand, let's not forget that the universities are not just centers of learning. They're also centers of employment. They're economic engines. Yeah. They contribute a great deal to the culture of the community. Look at what we get from Dal in terms of the Dal Arts Centre, the Recon Auditorium. Look at what we get from Dalhousie University in terms of being home to, well, it's where the symphony is homed. It's where we go for all sorts of cultural events. So there's a larger role than just post-secondary education in our large universities.
Yeah, and of course, their contribution in the media, the show. I have a Dal professor on later in the show talking about the blueberry industry. So,
well, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's a very good point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, lots of other things to get to. Time flies when we're having fun with Steve Murphy. We'll be right back.
X.
All right, continuing our chat with Steve Murphy here in studio. Again, always enjoy our chat. Steve, yesterday during our Councillors on the Hot Seat, I had Sean Cleary on and I would say it got off the rails, is how I would put it. One particular caller who's regular caller, look, Sean Cleary and he get into a shouting match, and Sean Cleary is... Look, I have two schools of thought in it. First of all, I like somebody when they're a politician, when they're willing to not be a prototypical politician. Somebody's willing to speak off the cuff and be controversial and not toe a party line. I like that.
You've just defined Sean Cleary's entire career in politics. Yeah.
But that said, I mean, I think that more effort should be needed, and I'm being, I think, kind here to Sean, or not kind, but truthful, when I say that his brand is getting hurt with his abrasiveness, his aggressiveness, and I think that if somebody were to advise him, they would probably tell him to tone it back.
You and I could have had this conversation 5 years ago. In fact, I think we did. And the point is, subsequent to that, Sean Cleary was reelected.
Yeah.
Now, I know there will be people who parse the numbers and say, well, Councillor Cleary got elected with a very small number of votes in a very competitive race and so on. This is all true. But when we counted up the votes, at the end of the night, he got the most, and he's still on council.
Yeah.
The voters are totally in charge of who is on council. Mm-hmm. If the voters in his district had wanted him gone, he'd be gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
The largest number voted for him. I know it is not a majority in his district, although winning a majority is not what it's about in our system.
No.
Getting the most votes, the first past the post concept. So, yes, I agree with all you're saying, and I have said before, and I will repeat, I don't think we're well served when things get personal. Mm-hmm. And I think you can be tough without being personal. I think you can be persistent without being personal. And to me, personal is when you engage in name-calling and things get turned up to a level where the words don't get heard because they're being lost to the volume.
Sure, yeah.
But again, I'm going to say this in defense of Sean Cleary, and not in defense of all of his policy perspectives, many of which I don't agree with. But I do know this: he comes on this program, he takes his lumps, and he stands his ground. Yeah, and he got reelected.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I and again, I'm careful here when I say this because I share your point of view. I appreciate the fact that he's willing to do it, and I love somebody who's willing to be controversial and not be buttoned down like too many federal and provincial politicians.
Agreed.
But what about this council in general? I mean, is it dysfunctional? I mean, I think it's good to have a council with some edge, but where are we at with this? Well,
I'm beginning to believe that the dysfunction's been baked in.
Yeah.
I really think that maybe the problems are almost structural, and I know that I don't necessarily want to get into the strong mayor debate again, although my position on the strong mayor hasn't changed. But remember, a stronger mayor means a weaker council.
Yeah.
The council that we have, though, now is and always has been, subject to legislation that comes from the provincial legislature. And the factor that has really changed, in my view, in the current iteration of the council is the role, the increasingly large role that the provincial government is taking in the operation of municipal government. It began when the Premier told the council that Minister Lohr would be exercising some control over development and so on. And then we had the Premier say that, well, look, if you insist on making Morris Street one way, right, it won't be. The Premier is saying it's his way or the highway on Morris Street and other things. Yeah. So the council is probably somewhat frustrated by that. And my sense is also that this council has a number of members who came from the previous council, and they were accustomed to a different style of leadership from Mayor Savage than we're getting from Mayor Fillmore. And I guess that is why we're now embroiled, and it seems to me we are embroiled in the debate about the role of the mayor. What should the role of the mayor be? But let's not forget, when you change the role of the mayor, you're fundamentally changing the role of the council.
Do you think Andy Fillmore is frustrated at this point? Or what are your thoughts on what do you read him?
I haven't spoken to him about it. I haven't asked him. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't. But Todd, I'd be very surprised if they all aren't frustrated down there. Well, because the growing perception is that they can't organize very much. Yeah. But to me, again, I think the problem may be baked into the structure of the council. I think we should take a long, hard look at the way that the whole thing operates. The powers of the mayor, and I've said on the program before, and I've said it on television, I'll repeat it now. Mm-hmm. I think we need more members of council elected at large to serve the whole of the municipality, not just a district. We need district representation. Yeah. We certainly do. Yeah. But I think it would be helpful if we had more voices that are more concerned about the whole.
What about those who have concerns that the city's not just simply not being managed properly, that management does not have the oversight that it should have? The council should have a greater role when it comes to overseeing, and this again speaks to the strong mayor power, and it's in his relationship with the CAO, and on it goes.
Well, let's not forget again that if we change the role of the mayor and install strong mayor powers, we will be changing the way the city is run, because the relationship between the mayor's office and the CAO will be fundamentally different. Mm-hmm. So yes, I mean I think the answer to your question is there is a lot of apparent dysfunction, but I think it's because it's been exposed maybe for the first time to many people. This is the way it is designed to operate, right, where the municipal government is not a very strong level of government, mm-hmm, even though the municipal government presides over the delivery of the most intimate services to people. And by that, I mean fire and police and sidewalks and garbage and water and sewage and recreation and parks, et cetera, and so on.
Mm. Do you think that the Premier of the province, Tim Houston, could be a little more tactful in his criticisms? Or, again, is that appropriate and perhaps some people would say refreshing that somebody's willing to speak that way?
Well, I don't think there's much doubt about what Tim Houston thinks about most things. It's pretty clear what he thinks. Yeah. It's pretty clear what he thinks about the forest fire situation in the province. Yeah. We've not been left to wonder.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, is it?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Todd. I think it is better when politicians are transparent, when they do speak their minds and take their chances with the voters. And there are lots of examples of people who did it in politics and who succeeded. And I'll come back to Sean Cleary. You may not care for Sean Cleary's politics, and clearly a lot of people don't. Mm. But he says what he thinks, and he got reelected. So the system at that level does seem to work.
For sure. I mean, time flies. I have a long list here and didn't get to much of it. Quickly, the Pierre Poilievre thing, Steve. He got 80% or what? Do people care about that, or will that be long, long forgotten?
I think some people care about it. There were a lot of people, I think, watching to see what happened out in Alberta. I don't think there was any doubt about what was going to happen, even if he is running against 200 people. Yeah. There was Pierre Poilievre and 200 people you'd never heard of, by and large. There were a couple who had some profile. But no, and that again, I know there are going to be people who will bristle at this, and I'm willing to be criticized for it, but this is the way our system is designed to operate. Mm. And if we don't like it, change the system. But it isn't the first time, nor will it be the last time under the current system anyway, where a party leader loses a seat and runs somewhere else and gets one. Yeah. It's been done here in the Maritimes frequently. Yeah. In the last 50 years, it's been done by Brian Mulroney, by Jean Chrétien. I mean, it's where party leaders go when they want to get into Parliament, safe seats.
I would say he's got to be gleeful at the first opportunity when Parliament reconvenes after being on the outside looking in to be back in that chair, right?
Oh, yes, but Mark Carney's had a pretty quiet summer because Poilievre's been otherwise occupied. There's been no question period, by the way.
Yeah.
And there won't be one till September 15th. And by the way, I hope it's better than the last few question periods I watched because that has turned into a bit of a spectacle and not for good reasons.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Steve, you're going away for a little bit.
Yes. Well, I said that the last time I was here, and then we checked the calendars, and it turned out, I'm not gone yet.
but it is soon coming. You're heading off to Europe.
Yeah, for a little.
All right,
little break.
Safe travels, pal, and we'll see you when you get back.
Appreciate the invitation. By the way, appreciate all the great feedback I get from people after I'm on here with you. Lots of people stop and want to talk about it, and I really enjoy that.
Right on, great stuff, Steve.
Thanks,
appreciate it. Steve Murphy, everybody. Your calls when we come back.
Axe.
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us again, 902-405-6000. Good chat with Steve Murphy. Always enjoy Steve in studio. And if you'd like to comment on any things you heard from Steve or our chat, that would be great. Or whatever else you've got in your mind, something that caught my eye. Well, I talked about it this morning with a guest. Read the story from the CBC website. I'll read a bit of it and then, again, kind of tee up the questions. As wildfires burn around Nova Scotia, and officials caution about the risk of more fires breaking out, community organizations and government departments are trying to get people living in the woods to leave. Many, however, cannot be convinced. There's a reluctance because it is home to some people. That's their comfort area, Matthew Reid said, who was my guest, manager of Souls Harbour Rescue Mission's Outreach Mobile program. Elected officials have been tight-lipped on the issues of homelessness, encampments in the woods during the drought. Basically avoiding the questions, sidestepping the questions, including Premier Tim Houston, who has been very, very, very vocal and heavy-handed, I guess. That might not be the right term, but not mincing words at all when it comes to people staying out of the woods and saying that fines would be levied and zero tolerance, and there has been zero tolerance for many. Yet, when it comes to people living in the woods and all the risk that is inherently goes with it, he has been, again, hasn't said much, if anything at all. As a matter of fact, has avoided the topic. Mayor Andy Fillmore, the same thing here in HRM. It says that it's a little too soon to get into details. I'll have more to say about that after a few more conversations with the housing minister, but we're looking at a way of getting folks out of danger and therefore getting us all out of danger by getting them out of the woods. Well, folks, what are your thoughts on this? People living in the woods and the risks that would go with that. People that we know would be, in some cases, smoking, some cases doing drugs, some cases have fires, cooking, small barbecues, whatever it might be. I mean, we're talking about very, very risky behavior, and we're told that the woods are to stay out of the woods. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? Do you think that people should be allowed to live in the woods? Because that's basically what's happening. Now, I get it that what do you do about it? How do you enforce it? It's not a good look to have cops go in there and drag people out of the woods. I understand that. And cops don't want to do that work, and politicians don't want to be seen as being heavy-handed and not having empathy for people. I get all of this. I get the nuances, but the bottom line is, if the risk is extremely high, which we know it is, and we're taking extreme measures to protect the homeowners and landowners, property owners, and the province, and multi-million dollars of industry and real estate, then why are we allowing people to live in the woods and doing the riskiest behavior of all, living in the woods? What are your thoughts on that? 902-405-6000. Also, I chatted with Steve about the Councils on the Hot Seat segment yesterday with Sean Cleary, and it got off the rails with one caller. And look, I don't want to say I'm okay with that, but I don't mind when things get heated, folks. That's kind of what it's about. That segment should be passionate and about. But I would say that what with Sean Cleary yesterday, it went past getting off the rails. It was completely unhinged, actually. to the point where Sean said, I don't care if people hate me or like me, and just very, very, very confrontational with callers, including one in particular with Chris. Is it a good thing to have members of council who are willing to be confrontational and spirited? Some would say good for Sean. Good for him being willing to stick his neck out on the line and act in that way, or to be that passionate about what he believes in, and that's okay. Or would you prefer your elected official be a little more measured and careful when it comes to messaging? 902-405-6000. So lots to chew on there, folks. And whatever else you got in your mind again, 902-405-6000. Gloria's giving us a call. Gloria, I saw you called yesterday. I didn't get you on, so I wanted to
I had to go out. I couldn't wait.
So I want to get you on today because I know I know you want to talk about Sean Cleary.
I want to begin by saying that I served over 23 years. I always tried to treat the residents with respect and kindness. And I want to say that my analogy of Sean Cleary and Steve's analogy is very different. I would give him A for arrogance and rudeness. The way he spoke to, I think her name is Nicole and Chris. But I want to bring your attention, Todd, to the HRM Code of Conduct, as outlined in Administrative Order 2024-001 It specifies that councillors must treat residents with respect and courtesy. If a councillor is rude or unresponsive, residents can report this to the municipal clerk, who will investigate the complaint under the code's procedures. And depending on the severity and nature of the conduct, consequences could include a reprimand or suspension of remuneration. Were you aware of that?
I think I was, yeah. But chapter and verse, thank you for reciting it. It sounds like it should be applied to what happened yesterday.
It certainly should be applied. And I think her name was Nicole, and Chris should immediately file a complaint with the clerk. And the code mandates that they be treated with respect and courtesy. And if a councillor's behavior falls short of that, then you should report it to the municipal clerk. And not only that, they're also required to respond to you. And residents of this municipality should start taking notice. When they send, like Nicole was trying to get a response from Mancini and from Cleary and couldn't get it from either, they should send all those requests by email so they have a record when they send it and what they asked for and no response. And that should also be filed against them. They're there being paid by the residents a good salary, a good pension, to respond to the needs of the residents, not to be a big, to be able to talk down to them. And I want to tell you one thing, Todd. Okay. If I was one of my people, as he refers to them, I would be embarrassed to say I even know them, and most of all, that I ever voted for him. The way he went on, wouldn't answer Nicole's call. It's ridiculous. I sat here listening to it, and I couldn't believe it. That's how far. And the other one that does the same thing is Sam Austin. There are two of them. Most of the councillors are polite, and there was quite a difference in he and Billy Gillis yesterday. Yeah. Billy Gillis showed that he respects people, and he has common sense. And it was good to have somebody who could really show him up. But that's all I have to say. But I'm encouraging Chris and Nicole and anybody else who was treated rudely by one of these councillors to file a complaint with the clerk and furthermore send a copy to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, who was part of writing this code.
Okay, Gloria, listen up.
They'll
go ahead.
Say he's over. Pardon?
No, finish up, please.
They'll say he's overreaching again. That's part of his job. He wrote the code.
Yeah. Well, Gloria, listen. I'll let your comment stand because I don't think I can add any more to it. Thank you.
Well, it's the truth, Todd.
Okay. Thank you, Gloria.
Okay. Okay.
Take care. 902-405-6000. By the way, I just received this email from the communications advisor for opportunities in social development with the province. Erica says this, I heard the recent conversation with Souls Harbour that I had this morning and wanted to share some additional context, just to provide context following today's discussion. Since the wood ban came into effect, the province has opened 142 additional emergency shelter beds. Outreach teams have already helped 88 people relocate to safer spaces, with more moves underway. This is a coordinated effort with municipalities, service providers, and community groups all working together to keep people safe during this period of extreme wildfire risk. Erica, thanks for the information. I appreciate that. Because that contradicts, well, it doesn't contradict, but what Matthew Reid said, manager of Souls Harbour Rescue Mission, he said that they've not convinced anybody to leave the woods. So, again, perhaps they're working in different areas, but Erica says that that they've had success moving 88 people out of the woods to safer locations. 902-405-6000. I think the bottom line is, folks, is that a lot of people are still refusing to leave, and will, no matter what will be offered to them, I shouldn't say no matter what, but basically shelter beds or anything the province or municipality would provide, they are not willing to move, to leave the woods. So the question stands, is that right or wrong, and should the province or the municipality do something about it? Or should we just turn a blind eye and let them live in the woods, despite the risks to the environment and to forest fires? 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Facts.
All right, continuing with your calls. So it reaches is 902-405-6000. Cameron's giving us a call. Hello, Cameron. Hi, Cameron.
Hello.
Hi there.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good, thanks. Listen, I just wanted to touch base on this. People living in the woods in this environment where they've been ordered to stay out of the woods. That the fire out in Bayers Lake, I guess that was caused by somebody living in the woods, or so they're suggesting.
Yeah, there's rumors of that. I don't think that's ever been confirmed, but there's rumors, certainly.
Yeah. Finding one of those people, $25,000, isn't going to do much because they don't have any money.
That's true.
Yeah. So maybe 10 years or 10 months in 6 months in a institution might help them remember the laws. Might even help them get off drugs if they're on them.
Yeah, or it might make things worse, right? That's the challenge. Incarceration is not always a good thing. So Cameron, I guess, why do you think the governments don't do anything about it? Why do you think that our municipal and provincial governments are not doing anything about this right now? When I say doing anything, I mean forcing people out.
Because they don't have any backbone.
Well,
they're afraid there'll be a backlash from the public, and that'll cost them votes, and then they'll lose their seat. That's all they're ever interested in, is winning their seat again.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Well, listen, I think that obviously they feel as though there would be backlash. I can't argue with that. I think you're probably right. Thanks for the call.
Okay.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Andrew, hello.
Hey there, Todd. I just wanted to point out some facts here because I am at the Flynn Park encampment. The first one is that I've had quite a few outreach workers and Souls Harbour approach me very recently. Two of them I hadn't seen in 7 months. One was my housing coordinator, which I have signed up for housing for. And the only thing they asked me when they showed up here was if there was anything I wanted from Walmart, which I politely declined. Souls Harbour as well, I've signed up for housing, and they haven't come to offer me anything as well. So I just want to point that out. I also want to point out that there is camping facilities throughout HRM that are open. My brother is actually going to be going to one next weekend, and they are allowed to have a propane-based fire. So, anything like that. There is tons of people living in the woods. Besides homeless people, we have got all kinds of cottages, homes, you name it. And lastly, I'd like to invite you, Andy Fillmore, and any of the counselors to come and hang out with me for a day and a night, and then also to spend a day and a night at a shelter that would be offered to someone like me, I guess. And really compare the two, so that way you guys get a real boots on the ground feel for why I am in the situation that I'm in and why I fight for the things that I fight for, like public housing for all.
Yeah. Well, listen, Andrew, I take your point. I really do. But that said, do you is it understandable at all that some people would consider this a serious public risk issue?
Todd, for my mental health and anyone's mental health, is it not an extreme public risk not to provide public housing to someone that needs it? When someone goes and asks these places for help, you will get stuck into a shelter, and then you're going to be there for months and months without any help, and you're going to be subjected to drugs and alcohol and the people that are affiliated with them. Yeah. So at least here at this encampment, I've got a little bit of space, a little bit of bubble space around me. Everything is clean and maintained in my area, and I do my best to maintain the park, but there is a couple people that are really dirty, and I can't do much about that. And again, just comparison, Todd. Literally, if you, Andy, any of the counselors, anyone of any substantial sitting really wants to see and feel the difference, I would love for you guys to see and feel the difference, because I don't want to be here, Todd. I don't want to be here. What I want is a dignified little bachelor. It doesn't have to be special. Man, I'll renovate the place myself. I just need a dignified living situation, and a shelter's not it, and they're not going to help me, Todd. They're only going to destroy my mental health by putting me in these situations where I'm surrounded by all the wrong people.
Yeah. So is it frustrating for you, Andrew? I sense a lot of frustration from you. You're feeling as though that people like me are disconnected and perhaps don't have the social license to comment on it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
It's straight out heartbreaking to me, Todd, because most people like yourself don't want to see someone like me in this position. And then I point out that when you get into this position, it's hard. It is a drop fall pit with not a lot of supports. And the supports that are out there really do seem to get people more likely into drugs and alcohol or into a bad mental health than to actually fix these things, right? So, I really think that the key is trying to get to preventative measures. And the very first preventative measure is making sure that someone's safety and security is met. And that starts with a dignified living situation.
I don't want to come across as being unsympathetic, Andrew, and I know you're not looking for sympathy. I get that. But I think that it's still important to have the broader conversation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What are your thoughts?
Oh, no, I agree. I think 100% we need to have this conversation. I want to see everyone out of these woods, too. I don't want to see anyone living in a situation where they feel they are better off in a tent because of what we're currently offering.
Okay, Andrew, appreciate your call. Thanks.
Thank you, Todd. Have a great day.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Donna, hello.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
What I wanted to talk about, please, is the Nova Scotia under-20 men's softball team is now over for the Canada Games over in St. John's, Newfoundland. And I just wanted to send out best wishes and hope everybody will root for them. And, these kids, I call them kids, they're under 20. My nephew's grandson is on the team, Keegan McGuire. He's the pitcher. And these kids and their coaches and their parents have, been dedicated and hardworking and whatnot. And too often these young teams, don't get enough credit from the media. I think it's wonderful. They qualify here in Nova Scotia to go to Newfoundland. The team consists of the players. Most of them are from the Carroll, Brookfield area, and there's a couple of young Indigenous boys from Cape Breton on the team too. And I just wish all of them well. And I'm thinking positive. And today they're playing. I have a niece is over there. A bunch of the family members are over there. They're keeping me informed what's what. They have 2 games today. One against New Brunswick and one against BC. So I'm just hoping that everybody will root for them, and all the best to our team. And another thing, Gloria, I love listening to her. She is a smart, feisty lady, not afraid to give her opinion or say whatever's on her mind. Anyway, that's it, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak about the team.
Okay, thank you,
and all the best to the team from Nova Scotia.
Indeed, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000, that is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. What is on your mind on this Tuesday? Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with the open hour when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Stephen, hello.
Hi, Todd.
Hi there.
Wow, that call from Andrew was actually kind of pretty powerful. Yeah, I just kind of woke up and just started listening intently like I was on the edge of my seat, but that's not what I wanted to call in about. I wanted to call in about the Gong show you had this morning. Everyone's got a little bit to blame. I think the lady who called in and kept talking about you've been served in, you've been served in, you've been served in. She kept poking and poking.
You're talking about yesterday, right?
Or yesterday, yeah. And the response was, "It's not my district."
Yeah.
You know, I know a little bit about it, but I can't do anything about it. But keep on poking and keep on poking and keep on poking the bear. That's just not what you do. You asked a question, you got it answered. Let's move on. Today with Chris and Sam, or Sean, it's obviously they don't like each other. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But yes, Sean kept interrupting Chris, but Chris was the one who resorted to name calling.
That's true, but Stephen, listen, I can't help but think that by default, the elected official has a responsibility to be a little more controlled. I think. Look, and I get it, and I respect passion, and I respect people who are willing to step out and to be confrontational. I'm okay with that. But when it goes beyond that and it gets extremely personal, I think at that point it would be wise for Sean to step back and take a breath and go, look, this is clearly getting off the rails. I apologize for perhaps getting or adding to it, but I just think that in that situation, the elected official has a little more accountability and responsibility than the caller does.
I do, but I also do give the elected officials in a municipal area a little bit more credit than I would give somebody like a provincial or a federal one.
Yeah, these
are most of them are off the street people. They're not career politicians. They're not polished. Like Nancy Hartling, who's my MLA, she's never been or my counselor. She's never been a counselor before.
Yeah,
she's not a career politician, so she's got a lot of baggage as a person. She's doing her best to be a really nice person.
Well, we all have baggage as people, right?
Oh yeah, but I think municipal is a little bit different because a lot of these people are just ordinary people out of life.
Yeah.
Whereas when you go into provincial politics, that it's a thicker skin, it's a different coaching. I don't forgive Sean for getting in. Well, I won't say forgive because that's not a good word to use. But I don't think Sean should have got into a shouting match with Chris, and I don't think Chris should have got into a shouting match with Sean. I think if the two of them want to have a shouting match, go to a public park and hammer it out.
Okay.
Not on a talk radio show where both of them they're talking over you. You can't even get a word in edgewise unless you mute everyone's mic.
Yeah.
So that's just my simple opinion on things. And you and Wayne should go out golfing and have a cigar.
There you go. Thanks, pal.
See you, bud.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Look, I'm just looking right now to the left of me in which one of my TV monitors, which is on the CTV News website, it says Bike Lane Project Frustrates Edmonton Residents. So the reason why I say that, folks, is that the bike lane debate is not unique to Halifax. The same debate is going on big time in Alberta, of course, in Ontario, and many other jurisdictions. So it's not unique to Halifax. 902-405-6000. Mike, hello.
Which leads you to question why.
Yeah.
Why all of a sudden did this nationally become so important to have bicycles ruling the streets? But anyway, I called to talk about the wonderful Cleary. You remember the day we got into it, and he was saying ridiculous comments like should be no cars on Waverley Road, get rid of all the cars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what, Todd? I can just picture him in meetings and stuff. And Vanessa and I were talking about it. Just picture him with rookies, new people coming on as counselors, and I could see him really intimidating some females and that too. He's very aggressive, and that would back people down that had less experience or things like that. Like, I don't think he's got the stuff to be a counselor. I really don't, and I don't know what his district sees in him. But I mean, if I was, like somebody else said, if I was listening to that on the radio or heard him speaking, I'd be a little embarrassed that he was representing me. But you had the guy on with what was his name, Todd? The guy with in the woods in the tent.
Matthew Reid, the manager of the Souls Harbour Rescue Mission.
No, the young fellow.
Oh, Andrew.
Andrew. Yeah. And you know what? It makes you question who's telling the truth. Like, you had people on there and they were talking about all their reaching out, and Andrew just simply said, like, nobody's coming to me. Yeah. Nobody asking me what my, mm-hmm. that really conflicted me, because I'm listening to that and I'm going like, this guy's really desperate to get in a good situation. And for all the people that are yakking about how they're helping these people, it's quite a contradiction from listening to the horse itself, right? And
that's true.
I don't understand it, but Todd, until Andrew got on, I was kind of taking a hard line too. I was thinking, everybody's got rules. We all got to follow rules, if they're enforced. But I was kind of thinking this terrible. Sorry, Andrew. I was thinking, like, if these people in the woods don't want to leave their tents and go into shelters, I was going to say maybe find another province to live. It's cold.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know what? We can't. I don't know. It's such a tough situation because we can't be just backing down to people who refuse to follow the rules. Oh man, what a complication, eh?
Yeah, and when things are this complicated, things generally don't happen, right? The result is lack of action, and that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, and I think somebody voiced it earlier about the politicians. The last thing they want to do is be painted with a tarnished brush. So, they're going to do everything they can to just stand on the top of the fence and don't fall either way.
Yeah.
You have a great day.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Kathy, hello.
Hi, Todd.
Hi there.
I don't know if you have an answer to this, and I would be surprised, but just back to Andrew and his comments regarding, he could do his own renovations for his own place. I live next door to a school that is incredibly, I guess the deadline has passed 2 years ago, and it's stalled. It's overrun with costs, and it's, I don't know how many millions over its budget, but I watch every day out my window as they throw out so many materials, so much plywood and gyprock and building materials that you can't even imagine. The dumpsters are filled up and they're taken away almost every day, like 3-4 of them. And I just don't know if, this is our tax dollars, like it's perfectly good stuff from what I can see. Where does that go? I don't know if it goes to the landfill, but there should be something in government that says, put this all aside, all the good stuff, because people need these materials and we need housing. And it just kind of blows my mind, the waste. It's just constant waste. Anyways, just a thought.
Yeah, no, I agree, Kathy. It's a shame that so much gets wasted like that. You're absolutely 100% correct.
Yeah, and I suppose I should write in and find out where this stuff goes, because it just blows my mind after like 5 years of them trying to build this school, how much stuff has been thrown away. But that's just my conservative background, is you don't waste.
Sure,
but
sure.
It could be used. It could be used to help people.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for taking my call.
Good comments. Appreciate it. Thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Victoria, hello.
Hi, Todd. How you doing?
I'm well, you?
Oh, pretty good. I was very entertained by that segment with Sean Clary yesterday. First of all, he says that 90% of people he hears from agree with him. That's because the rest of us in his district who try to get in touch with him, get our grammar corrected, get rude remarks about who we are, where we're from, whatever. He's an extremely rude man, so most of us will not contact him. But I am concerned about his comment about tolling the streets. When he was arguing with Chris, he kind of pushed it up in Chris's face that, yeah, they might go so far as to toll.
No, he didn't say that. He said if he had it his way, every road, I'm paraphrasing, every road leading to the peninsula would be tolled.
And he said they do that in other places, so why not here? So this is dangerous because we have councillors that don't listen to their constituents. Now, he's saying that that's a viable option. Well, what that will do is mean that just the elite will be able to move around on the peninsula unless they use a bicycle or the bus. So that's going to force people not to have a choice because they simply don't have the money to move around. Now, he says he would love to do it. He makes $90,000 a year off.
No, he makes $100,000 a year.
Oh, so there you go then. Yeah. So, it's a little bit easy when you got that kind of coin. But you take a senior who's trying to scrape by on a $28,000 pension, and those tolls are going to throw them out of their house that they paid for. He's just so heartless. And this will push people into the bike lanes. You'll see seniors trying to get their groceries on bicycles in the middle of the winter because this crazy plan goes through. Sean listens to nobody. If he's talking about it now, he will try to push it through. I'm afraid of the guy. And I'm so proud that Tim Houston has stepped in. Rock on, Tim.
Okay, Victoria, appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Take care, 902-405-6000. And listen, I don't want to start any unsubstantiated rumors, okay? There's not a plan in the works to toll every road onto the peninsula. That said, Sean Clary publicly said on the show yesterday that if he had it his way, and I'm paraphrasing, every road on the peninsula would be tolled in order to get rid of as many vehicles as possible heading onto the peninsula. Take that for what it is. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. 902-405-6000. Craig's giving us a call. Hello, Craig.
How you doing?
I'm well, you?
Not too bad. Just calling. I followed up. I was on the line yesterday, got cut off. I wanted to talk to the counselors, but I live in Beaverbank and I want to talk to Bill, but unfortunately got cut off. But what I'm getting at is, they're talking about the bike lanes, and it's such a big issue. We should be focusing on necessity in this HRM. I live in Beaverbank. We have a water issue. We've petitioned to have our road paved in the subdivision that I'm in, willing to pay, the 1/3 cost to get that paved. Back when the counselor, she's the radio host in Beaverbank there. She's no longer there. Bill took her. I forget her name now.
Yeah.
But she told us that
Lisa Blackburn is who you're talking about.
Lisa Blackburn, sorry, yeah. So Lisa told us that HRM was going to pave our roads and possibly bring water into our subdivision. And now 5 years later, after COVID, you see what the biggest topic is on the agenda is bike lanes in HRM, and we're sitting here with going to the local fire department to get water to fill our wells, while Cleary and some of the other ones are advocating to have bike lanes. I think there should be, something to be said about that. Like, prioritize what needs to be done, and then, if you think that we need bike lanes, maybe look at that down the road. But for $121 million, we can bring in a lot of water into a lot of people that need it most, and probably house a lot more of the unhoused. So, I just don't get where their angle is, or where they're if it's a personal thing that they're into these bikes. I don't think that should come into factor if you're in municipal government, because like Gloria says, you're not a party, you're from the district that getting voted in for, right? So I feel like, we're not getting represented very well by the people that are voted in. So that's my piece.
Okay, Craig.
Hopefully, if you get Bill back on there, I'll call in.
Okay, appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Linda, hello.
Hi.
Hi there.
How are you today?
I'm well, you?
I'm okay. Todd, with school starting in a couple weeks, I just wanted to bring back the violence at school and the new provincial code of conduct. I don't know if you're familiar with that document or not, but it's useless. It's useless. And nobody was consulted that works in the school system themselves over this. And I just kind of wanted to bring it back to the front because the province would prefer it gets swept under the rug. But this new code of conduct is not going to help it any at all.
Okay, Linda.
At all.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Hello, Jim.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Good, thanks. Just a quick one on Sean Cleary. I've been in 5 elections myself, 2 provincial, and the rest were municipal. The latest one was last year. Of course, I didn't win, but I had a decorum, and I think I'm considered to be a bit outspoken myself. And at times I may probably step over the line sometimes, but Cleary's got a track record of being insolent and using foul language on social media, as well as I watched him on the video on council one day using the F word. So, yeah, he's got to dress his act up and get some decorum. I won't say grow up. That's a little bit too pronounced, but I hope my point's made about him. My second point is that the ban is the ban, and I think they got to get in those woods and find as many people that are in the woods and get them out of there. And if they have to use bylaw officers or police, then do so and get them out, because the risks are greater than what's happening with those guys in the woods.
Are you surprised, Jim? Are you surprised that there's inaction when it comes to homeless people living in the woods and being allowed to live in the woods?
Yeah. After my conversation with the housing director, I know that they were going to outreach, because I called this week or late last week to check and see how they get these people out of there, and I was told that they basically are doing the best. And then they said on a newscast they had nowhere to put them. Well, there's plenty of gymnasiums anywhere you can get these people out of the woods, because the risk is greater than what they're dealing with. They have to go in. We all have sympathy for them. God knows I do. And but you have to get them out of the woods, because if they start a fire, the risks are going to be way far, and the repercussions are they're a danger to us all as long as they're in the woods. The ban is the ban, and when I stick up for the ban, it includes the homeless as well. So get the cops in there if they have to, and remove them.
Why do you think the government officials are being indifferent about this?
Yeah, I'm really surprised. I can't give you an exact answer. I set the list of maybe trying to burn the candle at both ends, be sympathetic, be political and stuff. But, geez, you can't have a ban and then, like I told you last week, cherry pick it. I mean, these people are in the woods, and they're deep in the woods, some of them. I know in Flint Park there's tents in there. And, they do light fires at times, and they've been known to do that. And they've been known, and some homeless have been known to start fires. So, listen, there's a time to be empathetic, and there's a time to say a ban is a ban. And if you look at the fires that are going on in the metro, particularly down and around Annapolis Royal and stuff like that, I'm sure there's homeless up there. I'm not saying they started the fire, but they're a high risk as long as they're in the woods. So get them out. If you have to arrest them, do it. That would be my take if I was mayor or whatever.
Okay, Jim. Appreciate the call. Thanks.
Take care.
All right, take care. Sean, hello.
Hey, Todd. Now, I'm going to go a little different today. I know you're a big baseball fan, but do you watch any of the Little League World Series?
I have not, no.
No. So I'm a huge baseball fan. This is one of my favorite tournaments every year because we get to see these young kids perform on such a big stage. And I just want to let people know that tonight, this evening, I think the game's at 5 o'clock. These kids play a Caribbean team, and they already spanked Australia 12-0 the last game.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think Canadians should these kids are 10 and 12 years old, playing on a massive world stage, and are phenomenal baseball players. It's great to watch, and these kids are I think wish them all the best in their game tonight, and hope some people tune in to watch them and support them.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it. And we'll open the phone lines tomorrow again on a Wednesday. Dr. Gillis will be by, so that means that we will take your calls from noon until 1. By the way, no science files today or next week. Rob Thacker is away, so no science files. Coming up next, drought conditions, fire risk means Nova Scotia blueberries will be in short supply. That when we come back. All right, David Percival, director of the Wild Blueberry Research Center here in Nova Scotia, joins me for a chat. David, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, so drought conditions, fire risks, bad combination for blueberry growers, and what update do you have when it comes to conditions and blueberry farmers? And it should be said, of course, that this is a $121 million a year annual export business in Nova Scotia. It's our largest agricultural product. So pretty impactful stuff here, right?
Oh, definitely, and especially when you look at the northern region of Nova Scotia, it's absolutely critical for this area. So the effects of the drought this year very, very pronounced. It started, really even at the early stages of summer. So plants just were able to get through bloom, and where they normally be, getting the berries to start to try, grow, and develop, things just quickly took a turn for the worse, and they've been struggling for the better part of all July and August.
And the bulk of a blueberry is water, right?
Oh, that's right. Like they're easily over 85-90% water, and it's quite a small fruit as well. They're only 0.6 grams, and so one of the problems with that is when they start even getting smaller. So you start seeing water loss and more or less like raisening up. You run into issues then not only with fruit quality because the berry's soft, has this wrinkled appearance, but also it gets even harder to try to harvest. So we use a comb-like rake to harvest the fruit, and so with set spacing. So the smaller fruit, they're just falling between the rakes. So it's one thing to go out in a field and try to get the crop harvested, but a lot of cases growers just can't even get at the crop because the fruit are so small.
Okay, and so you mentioned the northern part of the province is more impacted than the rest of the province, but I would assume that everywhere farmers are dealing with challenging conditions, right?
It is. It's whether you're in Pictou, Guysborough County, over Cumberland and Colchester, into the Hants areas. It's all really adversely affected by the drought this year. So it's across the province where the drought conditions are really being felt.
Okay, how about regular irrigation? Is it what's possible? What is not possible in order to make up for the lack of rain?
Well, historically, we used to get fairly regular rainfall events throughout the growing season, so maybe a couple centimeters a week sort of thing. But we can't count on this anymore, and as a result of the recent changes in the climate, things are a little bit more erratic. And the challenge that you get into when you're trying to think about bringing in an irrigation system is first it's very costly to bring in a system. And then the second thing is, well, where are you going to find the water? And in a lot of cases, it's just not there in some of these commercial fields. The soils themselves they aren't the best agricultural soils by any means. And so they don't hold a lot of water, even if it was available. And so it really sets the stage for quite a challenging scenario to try to work through for a lot of these growers.
Is this the worst condition you've ever seen?
It's the worst I've seen this is my 30th season doing work on wild blueberries here at the Faculty of Agriculture. So it's the worst. There's been other years that have been bad, but this is the first where I thought, okay, it's really, really challenging. And what we're also not sure of is because we're dealing with a perennial plant is next year's crop is also being being formed right now. So inside the stems, there's these small floral buds. So it's not only a matter of dealing with the challenges of what has been undertaken over the last 2 years with this year's crop, because we use a 2-year production cycle, but it's also next year's could also be in peril. So it's really quite a unfortunate and just incredibly sad series of events that's happened this field season.
All right. So what about the I guess the mood or when it comes to the morale of farmers here? It's got to be low, eh?
It's low. It's low, and report was released earlier this year. There's just not too many grower groups that have been able to have good years. And just looking at the situation in the wild blueberry sector, I think we'd have to go back 5+ years before we had what I'd consider a good year from not only a crop productivity perspective, but also a farm gate price. So definitely quite challenging times.
All right. What's available when it comes to helping out government programs, crop insurance, things like that? Tell us about that.
Okay, so there are crop insurance programs available in the Maritimes, and so they're available through the Nova Scotia Department of Agriculture, in the case within Nova Scotia. I can't go over the specific details of it, but it is contingent upon the yield history, right, of a field, and so it's getting difficult because growers have had a few challenging years now. So overall, like their 5-year average is going down. And so there's that, as well as the extra cost of the crop insurance that comes into consideration as well. So very, very challenging time for the growers.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I would think that when it comes to farms and buying and rather selling assets at some point, I'm sure that's part of the retirement plan for a lot of farmers. I would think that this is probably creating really bad timing for some. I would dare say that would be in that process, right?
It is, and especially when you look at the average age of our wild blueberry growers, it's a group that is incredibly experienced, but they do have quite a few years behind them, right? So it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, it's farming. It's probably the tale of two cities, really. I mean, to use a bad analogy, but the best of times and worst of times. When things are great, man, oh man, things are great, and the harvest is bountiful, and the money's there. But when things are bad, it's as bad as it gets, right? It's really, and I would think that it's an emotional roller coaster. And we talked a lot about I've heard in the media about mental health and farmers and all of the things that they deal with. This has got to be a really difficult, challenging time, I would think, from a mental health viewpoint.
Oh, it definitely it has to be, just given the array of challenges that these growers have had to try to work through over the past 10 years. Definitely challenging times.
For sure, absolutely. Well, let's hope what everybody's hoping for, and that's rain, right? I mean, that's what we need. Is it too late for this year's crop, by the way, or is there possibility to salvage some?
I would say, there's a possibility to salvage some, but I would say the majority of the crop is either harvested or too far gone. Wow. So it's the effects of it now are I hate to say it, but just from what I've seen. Mm-hmm. Looking across the fields, it is going to be minimal when you look at the larger picture.
Well, but like you said, I mean, you're looking at next year's crop as well, right? So rain is needed.
That's right. That's right. So we'll take every drop available.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it, David.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Take care. David Percival, director of the Wild Blueberry Research Center. Troubling news for sure. Phyllis just sent me this email. It says, living in the Annapolis Valley, I see smaller than normal apples, shriveled blueberries, shorter than normal corn. My mother has a high blueberry bush, and the berries are nothing but bird food. It is not looking good. I'm 68 years old. I've never seen a summer like this. Comes from Phil, who lives in Berwick. And there you go, folks. That's pretty solid anecdotal evidence, right? Somebody who's lived in the valley their entire life and never seen anything like this before. My, oh my. Anyway. We'll talk about all this with Bob Bancroft. What is the impact on habitat and wildlife when it comes to forest fires and drought and all that goes with it? Bob Bancroft, retired wildlife biologist, when we come back.
Facts.
All right, joining us is Bob Bancroft, retired wildlife biologist. Bob, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Nice to hear your voice again.
All right, so wildfires and drought and all the challenge. Look, we talk a lot about the impact on us as human beings, but I think we sometimes don't focus enough on habitat and what it does for wildlife, and also the what's leading how the forests are more vulnerable today is to fires is something else we should chat about. So let's start with that. What about the conditions that the forests are in, and how that might be lending itself to these fires?
Well, first of all, about 300 years ago, most of the forest was a mix. It had a lot of mature trees, Todd, and other age classes growing underneath and waiting for an old tree to fall down. So basically, the thrust of the whole thing was that a lot of the animals and the habitat in the forest was related to large mature forest cover. And that's certainly changed in the last 300 years, because we came in and the major agents of change, if you will, in that original forest, they weren't fire at all. This part of the world is nested in what they call a Wabanaki or an Acadian forest, and it has a lot of deciduous trees that are leafy, and it had some conifers, but the proportions were more fire resistant. So what's happened in the last 300 years is that we've gone back to a early succession or more fire prone, because first of all, conifers or softwoods have been favored by the industry, and they're also favored by disturbance. I attended a lecture many years ago by a Dr. Harries in Mount Allison. He talked about how when you create a disturbance like in the forest, that softwoods are kind of what tend to get favored, and the other early forests had both. The hurricanes were an issue, and insect infestations were the two dominant disturbing factors. Now we're humans having the disturbing factor, and we've been repeatedly removing the forests, and they're instead of having a lot of canopy cover, leaves and whatnot, shading the ground and the ground being damp, things have dried out very quickly when you clear cut, and that's what's been going on for some time. So the wildlife has had to adjust, and I guess we're looking at survivors. There's a large endangered species list that sort of indicates that some things haven't been favored very much, with the sticking to immature forests and ones that can grow up on dry ground, and things like spruce and fir, and they're being favored. And of course, they're the plantations. They cut down the original mix of forests, and they're planting softwoods. So it's all a bit of a challenge for a lot of the original species, and a lot of them have disappeared, and the other ones are doing what they can. But certainly, this weather and the climate change has to be factored into the last 300 years, because this is changing the picture quite abruptly.
Yeah, I just chatted with the director of the Wild Blueberry Research Center, and blueberry farmers are decimated right now, and they're not alone. I'm sure that there's many other crops that are in bad condition. Anecdotally, Bob, is this the worst you've ever seen, the conditions in Nova Scotia?
You know, I've been involved in fighting fires like the 35,000-acre Trafalgar fire, as they call it, years ago. But this last section of I mean, there's been droughts before, Todd, and I've seen hot water in the rivers and the fish being in trouble at late May, but it was very rare and it didn't last very long. Whereas what we're seeing this year is almost chronic, and long lasting, and that's causing a lot of problems. And just to mention waterways for a minute, I had white water lily beds all over the place, and pickerel weed, and it's all gone. It just the water levels got so low that it's killed off the plants, and the roots may be there and they may grow back, but they may not. So we're facing something new in this part of the world. And we're not really well equipped. There are ways of sort of climate proofing or fire proofing your forest, and I've been working on that for 50 years here in Pomkit. But most people aren't doing it. We're still planting softwood trees. They have softwood needles, and they're acidic, and the soil has been depleted from repeated harvest removals, and so we do have a lack of calcium and things like phosphorus in the soils that the plants need to grow. So the whole thing is actually been impacted severely already, and this is tipping the scales, I'm afraid. I know where I had land in New Brunswick, the drought there a couple of years ago was killing off some of the softwood trees, because the softwood trees are very shallow rooted, and it's just they're susceptible to wind and to drought.
My, oh my. So, again, the habitat, I can't imagine what this is doing to habitat and to wildlife, right? Paint the picture of what you think is going on there.
Well, first of all, it's not historically something that's been built into the roughly 10,000 years that the wildlife have been living here, so it's a change. And, for example, grizzly bears out west have the sense to take their young and run for water when they smell smoke. It's sort of inherently built into the behavioral patterns because of the regularity, and a lot of those forests are fire originated, whereas our forests are not. So I don't know what's happening here, but I can tell you that I think a lot of the birds have very sensitive. They have sacs instead of lungs, mostly, and they're very vulnerable to the smoke. And I mean, we've had smoke here, and there's no fire close by, but you just don't know what's going on. It's pretty scary. So there's an effect on breathing, and certainly an effect on habitat. And the other thing is, I remember like moose pasture up north. I used to live in the Yukon, and after a fire, they'd leave all the material there, so there was quite a flush growth for moose. And they were living in mature forest nearby, and they could come out and eat, and it was called moose pasture, actually, the fire scene. But what we have here is a different story. The land has been depleted, and I don't enjoy painting this picture, but from a biological point of view, it's been turning into a wasteland now for some time.
Wow, wasteland.
Well, and then they herbicide it, so leafy plants actually make the soil sweet. They help the pH of the soil, whereas these conifers are just. So there are a few trees that survive what we've got after 100 years or so of this, and the trees like the jack pine, it's the only one that actually has cones that open up, and it takes the heat of a fire to do that. And in the other case, what's happened is trees that grow in swamps around here, Todd, red maple, black spruce, they tend to survive fires if they're not too deep and dark. That's the other problem, is a light spring fire doesn't often do much damage, but a fire this time of year really burns, and the soil layer suffers greatly. So those trees often survive at least the spring fires, and then they propagate. They're the only seed sources that are left on these fire sites, so they come out of the swamp, and you get black spruce growing and red maple and things like that survive that way. And that's when jack pines survive. And we've got 50 tree species here. That's the other thing people can do, is plant deep-rooted hardwood trees that are leafy and build soil instead of depleting the soil, and let them have become elders. And we've got wood ducks right now eating the acorns, the fresh acorns on the ground, and we've got a lot of hole dwellers like flying squirrels and things like barred owls that are here, and they all need some of that original forest. So if we brought back that mix that we had 400 years ago, it would be more resilient to the climate change. the deeper rooted species of trees would have a better chance of surviving right now. Hurricanes as well as drought.
Yeah, gosh, hurricanes! My goodness gracious, that season's coming the next, right? Who knows what can happen?
Yeah, well, that's what has historically been an issue here. That and the insects, as I mentioned, the insect infestations. So makes me glad we don't have all our eggs in one basket. Anyway, sort of proverbially, you're better off to diversify. If you're a property owner that has a whole bunch of white spruce around, make little holes in it and plant some deeper rooted trees. I really like the oaks, but you have to protect them, Todd, or they get eaten by rabbits and deer and porcupines. So I have to put up stakes and wire in order to get them started. And once they're up a ways, they're okay. But there is a way out of this. But we're going to have some challenges. There's no doubt about it.
Well, and it's not going to happen overnight either, right? Even if everybody started doing the right things tomorrow, we're still going to be a long time reversing of what we've caused.
You're right, but the other thing is there's no better chance to start now than now. You can't wait another 10 years. You shouldn't anyway. I think it's time to mobilize in terms of making our forests more fireproof.
Right.
And that would provide a lot more wildlife habitat, too.
Okay, Bob, appreciate it.
Talking
soon.
with you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bob Bancroft, wildlife biologist, retired wildlife biologist with the province, and I think that's pretty sobering conversation right there, folks. And I think what Bob says is quite wise, and I think that a lot of wisdom there. Unfortunately, when it comes to commercial operations and the economy, and that often is the priority, and that's therein lies the problem, right? A drop in EV sales signals Ottawa should drop its mandate, according to the Montreal Economic Institute. We'll discuss this when we come back.
Facts.
A drop in EV sales signals Ottawa should drop its EV mandate, according to the Montreal Economic Institute. Joining us to talk about all this is Samantha Dagres, Communications Manager at the MEI. Samantha, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Very glad to be here.
All right, so explain for those who don't know what the EV mandate is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2023, the federal government introduced a target to basically eliminate the sale of traditional gas-powered vehicles by 2035. So for us to get there, we would have to see about 20% of new vehicle sales be electric or plug-in hybrid by next year. But StatsCan data on vehicle sales shows that we are very far from that target.
How far from the target?
So 20 points. So what we did is we compared the second quarter of this year to last year, and we found that electric vehicle sales are down about 36.8% year over year. Just in June, about 7.9% of vehicle sales in Canada were zero emission, compared to last June, which was 13%. So not only are we very far away from our target, but we're trending in the wrong direction.
Okay, and why? Any speculation as to why that is? What's going on here?
Well, consumers are just not interested in electric vehicles right now. The StatCan data came after a Leger poll was released and found that 68% of Canadians think that the EV mandate or the gas-powered vehicle sales ban was unrealistic. And this is completely in keeping with our poll. MEI commissions an energy poll every year. And last year we found that about 55% of Canadians find it unrealistic. So it seems that as we're getting closer and closer to that target, Canadians are finding it more and more unrealistic. And I mean, that would completely ring true if you look at the sales. And they told us last year that concerns around pricing were high. A lack of infrastructure for charging was a main concern, and also that there are worries that these vehicles are not well adapted to Canada's cold climate. So all of these things remain concerns, and they've not been addressed by Ottawa. And so basically, if it were up to me, consumer choices are up to consumers. The government can put all these, objectives and targets, but unless someone is actually buying the vehicle at the end of the day, we're just not going to get there.
And of course, in the United States, with Donald Trump, they've completely turned away from EV mandates, and look, that has to have an impact on this country. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it certainly has an impact on the huge bet that governments in Ontario, Quebec, and the federal government have made on electric vehicles. Yeah. We've pledged billions of dollars. The federal government alone, $30 billion pledged to the manufacturing of electric batteries in Canada. And so, to the chagrin of this government, no, the United States is not pursuing their EV agenda, which makes our gamble, really even more tenuous.
Yeah, for sure, but that might be part of the reason why it's insistent on forging ahead with this, because of the Liberal government's gamble on this industry and subsidization of it, and large companies like Volkswagen and others. Perhaps that's at play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles is another way that this government is trying to shield the bad investment they're making. And it's a bad investment. We're seeing, in Canada, the rate of purchase go down, but this is true across the world. And we saw companies like Northvolt, like Stellantis, kind of go through its own, fiscal troubles abroad, where at least Northvolt in Quebec has said that that the fact that they went bankrupt in Europe is not going to affect their operations in Quebec, but how could it not? So we're paying attention to these companies who are not doing super well, but that, Canada has made huge bets on. And ultimately, the EV mandate is almost wishful thinking, right? If we're going to adopt new technologies, new cars, it's going to have to happen because Canadians find it convenient for their transportation, and also that innovation has gotten so good that they're affordable. These things are not happening as quickly as Ottawa would like, so they have to rescind their targets. And it's not just Canadians, right? There were leaders in the vehicle industry that penned a letter to Mark Carney weeks after he became Prime Minister saying that he must reverse the mandate. It is simply unrealistic.
Right. Mark Carney has met with automotive leaders and appears to be open to hearing their concerns. What are your thoughts on dialogue that he's had and the fact that he's at least meeting with some of these people?
I think it's very positive. I think he's going to hear the industry, he's going to hear Canadians, and he's going to look at the numbers. If people aren't purchasing the electric vehicles at the rate they want, it's just simply untenable to keep this mandate. And, we're just talking about, subsidies and consumer costs, but what we don't often talk about is the pressure on our electricity grid. We did a study and we found that the EV burden on the grid can increase demand for electricity between 7.5 and 15.3% in Canada, and that is very expensive. And this at a time when provinces like Alberta are looking to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on data centers. This is all going to take a lot of electricity, and we need to make sure that we're not putting too much pressure on the grids.
All right. When it comes to, you mentioned earlier the Chinese EV mandates, do you think that eventually we'll drop those? Or, I mean, look, we've got a trade war with the United States, but we have certainly one with China when it comes to canola and other products. So potentially, what are your thoughts on dropping that EV mandate? Because that would make vehicles a lot more affordable, and I would think would certainly raise consumer. Would be more motivated to purchase those vehicles. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Chinese EVs are considerably cheaper than their alternatives. So if Ottawa was actually concerned about pricing, that they would rescind these tariffs. But we saw, Mark Carney and Doug Ford come out today saying that, amid all these headwinds from a U.S. trade war, what Canada needs is to become more competitive on the global stage. And tariffs certainly do the opposite. I think you can agree on that. So although there's been no overtures to the like that they will rescind tariffs on EVs, we certainly know that there's pressure coming from especially Western provinces, the agricultural heartland, saying that, these kinds of these tariffs, because China has retaliated substantially with its own tariffs on our canola products, we're putting about 200,000 Canadian workers in jeopardy. So hopefully they will heed the call and see that, in this moment of trade flux and growing protectionism, what we need is to be opening up trade to make us more competitive and bring down the cost of goods in Canada.
And I think if he's going to make a decision or reverse this decision, it's better now than I think the sooner it comes, the better, because the signal to the industry and to manufacturers, I mean, I'm sure that they would want to know and future investment into vehicle manufacturing and dealerships and all of the continuum that goes with it would be at play here. So make a decision, right? Get it done.
Absolutely. Uncertainty is like poison for the business industry, for investors, right? Because they're looking to invest huge lump sums of money, but these things typically only come to fruition decades down the line. And if we don't know that both the trade and the regulatory environment, which is also changing in Canada, if we don't see those stabilize, it's going to mean a lack of investment for the future.
Samantha, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this.
Glad to be here. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care. Samantha Dagres, Communications Manager at the Montreal Economic Institute. How cancer screening tests in Nova Scotia stack up with the rest of the country? We'll get into that when we come back.
Facts.
All right, this story in the Chronicle Herald. Cancer screening is crucial in the fight against the deadly disease, and a new report from Stats Canada shows how Nova Scotia is doing compared to the national average. Joining us to discuss all of this is Heather Mulligan, the Senior Manager of Advocacy for the Canadian Cancer Society. Heather, thanks for joining the show.
Good afternoon, Todd.
All right, so I guess give us some of the kind of the relevant information first off. These what are the statistics telling us when it comes to how we're stacking up?
Yeah, well, what we learned last week from Statistics Canada is that for Nova Scotia, it's really a mixed bag. There's some good news and there's some areas of concern. On the positive side, on the good news side, we're ahead of the national average when it comes to colorectal cancer screening. But we're also lagging behind when it comes to breast and cervical cancer screening. And that matters because we know that early detection saves lives. The sooner someone identifies cancer, not only does it improve the outcomes for that person and gives them more treatment options, but it's also better for our healthcare system because it doesn't require additional health human resources and drag. And so, while we can celebrate the progress in some areas that we're seeing, we also need to confront where access is falling short.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the wins first off.
Yeah, colorectal cancer screening. So 56% of Nova Scotians aged 50 to 74 are reporting recent colorectal cancer screening compared to 49% nationally. We're one of the only provinces mailing screening kits directly to people. So this is a really proactive step, and the stats prove that this approach works. We're also seeing more uptake in younger groups, which supports the call of the Canadian Cancer Society to reduce the cancer screening age for the official program to 45. That would allow us to catch cancers earlier and save more lives. So there is something Nova Scotians are doing right, and that's proof that when you lower the barriers and you deliver care directly to people in their homes, people participate.
Okay, let's talk about some of the other. So, any other areas in which we're doing well in?
You know what? We're doing really well there when it comes to colorectal cancer screening. However, there are some areas for improvement, and I think it's the lesson that we're learning for colorectal cancer screening. If we look at HPV and cervical cancer screening, so colorectal cancer, of course, we deliver the test right to people's homes. We're trailing when it comes to cervical cancer. So only 61% of women between the ages of 25 and 69 in Nova Scotia report a recent Pap test, compared to 69% nationally. So why this is important is, Pap tests, rely on primary care. It relies on clinics and doctors. But there's new innovative approaches and tools, specifically HPV testing. The HPV test is more accurate. It's less frequent, meaning every 5 years versus every 3. And in some cases, it can be done at home, through a self-testing. And when you consider, 55% of the Atlantic Canadian population is living in a rural area, a home-based option can be a game changer in terms of health equity. So, we want to see Nova Scotia accelerate its transition from traditional Pap testing to HPV testing. It's a huge area of opportunity for us. And it really can transform equity. But until the labs are ready and the rollout's complete, there's a real risk of leaving people behind.
Yeah, for sure. Breast cancer, tell us about where we're at with that.
Nova Scotia has been a leader for decades when it comes to breast cancer screening. So we were one of the very first provinces in Canada to reduce the self-referral, meaning you don't need a family doctor, but referral age to 40, and allowing women to participate in breast imaging and screening. So now we're seeing that there are longer waits. There's some work shortage that is creating pressure and delays. And so, only 67% of women aged 50 to 74 are reporting recent mammograms compared to 79% nationally. Routine mammograms, as in Nova Scotia, don't require a doctor referral, but follow-up still depends heavily on primary care and specialist access. And so what we do want to see, and this is a reminder that you can't separate screening from the broader healthcare crisis. When we don't have enough staff or enough system capacity, people are waiting, and sometimes far too long. And so what we want to do is we want to see Nova Scotia increase its breast cancer screening rates, and so that we can get back to that leadership position in terms of our mammograms.
And the more that people hear about wait lists and long wait lists and not being able to find specialists or primary care or whatever, some people just give up, right? And that's a challenge that adds to the problem.
Oh, absolutely. And so the message to government is this report is a gentle reminder that we need to get back to that campaign promise of fixing healthcare and focusing on those building blocks of prevention. That means resourcing our screening programs to reduce the wait times, coordinating workforce planning so we have staff to deliver, modernizing our access with new tools like HPV screening. But also, if there's a Nova Scotia listening and you're due, book the screening. If you're unsure, ask your care provider, call the cancer care team. Screening saves lives, full stop. The more we participate, the stronger, the response will be. And hearing stories like this, yes, it can be discouraging. However, it is so important to prioritize your health. So don't let a story like this get in the way. Book your appointment, talk to your primary care, talk to your care team, talk to cancer care, and get your test.
And of course, we all know that the pandemic had a massive impact on so much of our lives, including this. And people get out of the routine of doing it, and backlogs incurred, and so we're still having a hangover from the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And it's not just in terms of the health, human resources, and that piece. There's also another hangover, and we're not really talking about it, but prevention, broadly speaking, also includes reducing our risks. This is also where, there's a lot of new narrative and dialogue around building the workforce of tomorrow and how we need to have, a new modern economy. But, we're trying to do this. We need to have a strong economy with a strong workforce and a healthy workforce. This means reducing risks like tobacco use, alcohol consumption, obesity, and making sure that screening is accessible so cancers are caught early. And so screening is prevention in action. People, when you go get your test and you go to your doctor and you prioritize that is an important step. But there's other things that we need to be focusing on in the broader healthcare and the broader prevention story about how do we actually help Nova Scotians develop and maintain their health. Not only screen for cancer, but to reduce the risks of developing cancer through tobacco, alcohol, obesity, and other risk factors. And we haven't seen a lot of action in terms of supporting Nova Scotians in developing their health. And so hopefully this report from Stats Canada is, that gentle reminder to government that the building blocks of prevention are also building blocks of the workforce they're trying to develop. Healthier Nova Scotians, a healthier workforce requires healthcare, and it requires a healthy workforce, and that goes hand in hand.
Heather, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this today.
Not a problem, Todd.
All right, take care. Heather Mulligan, Senior Manager of Advocacy for the Canadian Cancer Society. Now, a email or two as we head to the end of the show. Clara says this via email, says, I heard the assault on callers, courtesy Sean Cleary, on Monday. When he had no logical answer to a caller's question, he resorted to aggression. His aggression was frightening. That comes from Claire. All right, let's see. We get some more here. This one about the woods ban and homelessness, homeless people living homeless in the woods and refusing in some cases to leave. We talked about this earlier on the show. This one from Angela says, today's subject is mind-boggling why the government does not act. There's a predictable and foreseeable outcome for allowing tents during a ban, and the government is exhibiting irresponsible behavior by turning a blind eye to enforcing the rules. I'm curious, where is the liability should a fire start and the government ought to have known yet choose not to enforce? I would think the cost of sheltering people would pale in comparison to the overwhelming cost of fighting fires and the devastating potential losses to people's homes, wildlife, etc. There clearly needs to be a prioritization for unhoused individuals, yet it needs to be balanced with the safety of the community as a whole. This email from Wendy says, I find it troubling that homeless living in the woods are managing to get off with their refusal to leave. Yet we do it, and we risk a huge fine. I suppose if we needed to be dragged out there, where would they take us? I'm not suggesting homeless should go to jail, but they should be just as accountable as the rest of us. Comes from Wendy. This email also on Sean Cleary from Lee says, it just in one breath, Cleary says he gets 90% support for bike lanes in his area, and in another breath, when a caller suggests a plebiscite, which I think the public would support, he says it's preposterous. If he thinks the public wants bike lanes, what is he scared of? If of course he knows, just like you know, and just like I know, that public support overall is strongly against bike lanes. The Bike Coalition has 2,300 people who send basically the same email to all the councillors. Then they pretend they aren't receiving the same general email. We have all seen the style. Anyway, the rest of the email, can't make sense of the rest of the email. Anyway, you get the point. He's not happy. So thanks for the emails, everybody. We appreciate it very much. Thanks for listening as well. Thanks to Vanessa Van Den Ness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job. As always, we're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.